we welcome in our guy, Isaac. Isaac, this must be taking you a minute because there's so many guys that are going places in the portal this year. This is quite a project you've undertaken here.
Oh, it is one of those things that I think I might have bit off more than I could chew originally, but it's really good actually at the same time. I feel like it's taking me a long time. It's annoying at times to go through all of it, but at the end of the day, I feel really good about the teams, and it kind of feels like you get to start to really know what the personnel looks like. You have ideas of what these rosters are going to look like, what the pecking order could be, and I can't wait to be wrong in 3 or 4 months.
Well, yeah, and it's the only way to have a sense of what these teams are going to be going into the season, because remembering what they were last year almost doesn't mean anything at all anymore. I think in your article you listed 80 some odd transfers going into or moving around the ACC. I want to hit on the Syracuse players first here with you, Isaac. You mentioned Jaquan Carlos. You had him in your tweet as well as one of the guys that pops to you that may be like being swept under the rug a little bit and may have a more important role in this league than people are aware of. What do you think of Jaquan coming to Syracuse?
Yeah, I'm just really excited about his fit. I think it just makes a lot of sense with what they were looking for in the portal. You know, I've been trying to split the guys up into different buckets, and I think he's really more of like an initiator point guard, but he can shoot it as well. And I think just opening that paint up a little bit, like I like the idea of matching him with J.J. Starling, just because Starling's so big and athletic, and kind of I think he can be more of a downhill threat than what he was last year. And pairing him with a guy like Carlos who can stretch the floor a little bit undersized, but plays with really good tempo. I think his look-ahead passes in transition are interesting to me to try to get more easier buckets, I think, for Syracuse in transition. So I just like the fit for him there. And, you know, Hofstra's been a place that transfers have gone, or guys that have gone and then transferred up to the high major level and done a good job. So I think when you're kind of looking at transfer portal rankings, Jaquan Carlos isn't going to be near the top of the list here, but I think bang for their buck, Syracuse has a chance to get a lot more out of him than maybe what they had to dole over from out of their free agency, the money that they had for him.
Yeah, certainly. We went over it ad nauseum day by day back then of who's available, who they're going to get. Is it this guy, is it that guy? And it ended up being Carlos for sure coming up here from Hofstra. The first main get that Syracuse got was Eddie Lampkin. Then there was kind of a weird period if we didn't know what was going on, and now he's settled in and still here. And I think your little a paragraph on Lampkin encapsulated a lot of our thoughts here, that like he does a lot. He does a lot, but it's also he's not the perfect fit, but he's a good player. Where do you feel on Lampkin and how he fits into the whole situation?
Yeah, I'm torn on him, because I feel like he's going to be productive and he's going to do what you kind of want from your big man as like a really awesome offensive rebounder. He draws a ton of fouls. So that is also helpful too, especially just getting you to the bonus. So he does some of those things well, but then he also has some of those frustrating parts of his game where he's not really like a new age big man, right? Like he doesn't stretch the floor. I don't think he's even shot a three throughout his college career. He's not a very good free throw shooter. He's shooting under 59% from the free throw line for his career. His decision making, he had a really high turnover rate last year. So it's a really interesting kind of dynamic where you need him because you need a big body like that, but you also start to need him to adjust his game a little bit because the turnover rate at 24% last year just isn't good enough. Like that just can't be the case for this team this year. And when you're a role player who has, maybe you're third on the team in usage rate or fourth on the team in usage rate, like you have to make the most out of those opportunities when you get them. And Lampkin far too often was just kind of, it just was kind of hurting his team at times. So I feel like that's like the push-pull with him because he can be a really helpful piece of this if he kind of gets out of his own way. And I'm fascinated to see how Syracuse can do that because, again, like you kind of look through the transfer portal cycle, a lot of teams had to pay up for transfer centers that weren't very good, right? Like Ugana Onyenso is going to Kansas State, and Kansas State had to pay big-time money to get a guy like him on campus. And Eddie Lampkin is far more proven, and I think Eddie Lampkin's going to have a lot better year next year than Onyenso. So in that regard, it was good to get him done early, but you need him start playing like a vet, because for a while it feels like he's still had some of those underclassmen, those freshmen, big men type of mistakes. And we're talking about a guy here who's going to be one of the older guys on the team next year and a fifth-year senior.
Yeah, and a very different type of center than Syracuse has had in a long time. So it's going to be interesting to watch how he fits into the whole proceedings. And then, as Isaac Trotter is with us from 24/7 Sports, talking some college hoops, talking a little transfer portal review for the ACC. Jair Davis, an early get from Delaware. Lucas Taylor was a later get from Georgia State. It feels like that, big men paying them obviously is maybe the hardest thing to do in the portal, but getting guys from programs willing to transfer to you without a starting role feels like it's got to be a tricky thing. Those feel like decent pickups, it would seem to be, Isaac, for guys that seem to be the primary guys that should be coming off the bench this year for the Orange.
No, that's a great point. It's a great point, because I've been thinking about this rotation. I think it's Carlos and Starling, kind of those backcourt members, and then Chris Bell's probably looking at your starting three with Donnie Freeman at the 4 and Lampkin. I think you'd project as that starting 5, and then off the bench it's pretty wide open. And so for me, I look at Davis as probably that third big man in that rotation behind Freeman and Lampkin, and that's a lot of minutes there for him. And last year he played a lot as a small ball 5. I love his ability, his fluidity off the bounce, being able to take advantage of matchups. I don't think that he will often be guarded by 5s, which is what he was guarded by a lot last year, which probably led to his ability to kind of break them down off the bounce and get into the paint. So I'm interested to see how well he is as a driver against ACC 4s, which there's some good 4s in the league, right? But then with Lucas Taylor, like that made a lot of sense to me as well. Just, I think a lot of times, like some of these guys, they transfer down to a lower level and they put up big numbers, but I think that he's a piece that can be a role player at the high major ranks. And I feel like the threes, the catch and shoot threes is going to be a really big part of his personnel. And I think the question with him is, like, when he's not making threes, what else does he bring to the table? So that, like, if he can do more than just be a spot up catch and shoot 3-point shooter, like, that'd be great. But if not, like, he also fills a pretty big void, because there are some shooting questions on this roster, especially with that second unit, and maybe Taylor's a big part of that solution.
Yeah, besides Bell, there's not a lot of proven outside threats on the roster. JJ was, okay from the outside last year. That's kind of it, so we'll see where it is. But, Isaac, I think a lot of what we've talked about, and I'm curious of your thoughts on this, is that last year it looked like Syracuse had a lot of talent, but it was, it was like a puzzle that was trying to be put together from, like, mismatched boxes. Like, the pieces didn't fit. It looks like, and again, we haven't seen it, it looks like the pieces, in theory, should fit better this year. Is that your sense when you look at what Syracuse had on their roster last year versus, what they accomplished here in the portal this year?
Yeah, I think you can just also see, like, the different areas of the floor where they can be successful, right? Like, again, like I talked about, like, if Starling is somebody who can actually drive the basketball to the rim at a high level, his rim rate was just way too low last year. I think his free throw rate wasn't high enough, and part of that was just because Judah had the ball a lot, right? And, like, I feel like he had to kind of step into a spot-up role. But, like, if he is a guy that can get back to playing downhill and putting pressure on the rim, and then you have Lampkin who's putting pressure on the rim, and then you have Freeman who, he's kind of, a bird, like, he's expanding his game out to the perimeter, but I feel like he's a 5 who, like, is learning how to play the 4 as his body changed, not the opposite. He's not like a guard who got a lot bigger and has to kind of sift down to a different position. So I still think that the rim pressure from him will be there. Chris Bell, you talk about him as a guy who can get it going from 3. Maybe you see Carlos be able to be someone who can get it going from the mid-range. Like, you see the different areas of the floor where this group can kind of be more well-rounded than last year's team, which felt a lot like guard-driven. This year feels like you can kind of see avenues where Syracuse can kind of beat you from multiple different levels of the floor with multiple different options. Now, granted, like, I don't know if they have a superstar yet, and that's still a real question, but I'm really going to bet on these teams that have a lot of veteran leadership in that backcourt, and Carlos has played a lot of minutes, and JJ Starling, we talk so much about, like, guys that you get in the portal. Like, I'm big on the guys that you keep in the portal, and there's a huge sample size of that year 2 transfer jump, and if Starling can be that second-year transfer jump, as he, kind of got comfortable year 1 at Syracuse, can kind of break out in year 2 at Syracuse, kind of follow the model that we've seen in the past. I mean, I can't remember the stat exactly, but I want to say 9 of our All-Americans last year were second-year transfers. So it's a real thing. Like, it's a real thing. Terrence Shannon Jr., Tyler Kolek, Jalen Pickett. I'm just thinking of the names off the top of my head, some of these guys that have been All-Americans in the past in that second year with their program. And I think Starling could be one of those next big names, too.
All right, that is an intriguing fact, Isaac, for Syracuse fans to hear. Obviously, the 4 transfers coming in this year, we will not get to find out about a second year because they'll all be in their final year of eligibility here. But that'll be interesting to watch. Settling in another year, maybe a slightly better role to find for JJ this year. That'll be something interesting to watch out for. Isaac Trotter, 247 Sports, talking a little college basketball with you. The other side of the coin with the portal this year that I'm sure will come up a lot during the Orange basketball season is that Malik Brown is on Duke. What do you make of his fit there? I mean, they got the crazy recruiting class, Cooper Flagg, all these guys. How's Malik fitting in with that group as a Blue Devil?
Yeah, the early returns on him have been phenomenal. As a lot of Syracuse fans know, he's really good at basketball, and I think that when you put a high-level processor on a really talented team, good things tend to happen. So for me, I think Malik, I would probably put him as the starting forward right now. I think Cooper Flagg's ability to really be more of a playmaking wing / forward helps him potentially play the 3. And so then Brown can slot in as the 4, and Kaman Malawak, Duke's 5-star center, he's 7'2", 250 pounds. He's going to probably play the center. So I think what Duke is looking for from Malik is just to be like one of our plug-the-gap defenders. Like, he was one of the best defenders in all the league last year. And, like, if he can be the guy that handles some of these really good forwards in the league and lets Cooper Flagg kind of, like, fly around and just go be an athlete and block shots as a secondary rim protector, like, that's where I feel like Duke thinks its defense could be one of the best in the ACC and one of the best in the country. So I don't think Malik's going to go to Duke and average 12 points a game and put up huge numbers offensively, but as a play finisher, as a guy who can make passes on 4-on-3 situations, use them in the short roll, find open shooters, and just guard multiple positions and hit the glass with a vengeance, like, I think he's going to do all the role player stuff really, really well. So I think he's a starter. I would project him there to be a starter today, but I don't know if he's going to be, a superstar, and that's probably a good thing for both sides.
Yeah, and from a Syracuse perspective, he's probably going to be just frustratingly excellent in his role at Duke, which can bother the Syracuse side of things all year long, but that's just kind of the way it goes when you get into the portal. I know, Isaac, you've been paying some attention as well to the Summer League, some of these guys you've been watching, trying to latch on to the pros. You caught any of these Syracuse guys in action? We've been trying to update people on Judah Midz's progress. You seen him play at all so far here in the last few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, with Judah, it's like I'm still a little surprised. Like, I don't know how to feel about it because I'm still surprised that he wasn't picked in the NBA draft, right? Like, he's been a guy that just continually pops, especially in the combine. I thought he was really, really good in the combine as well. So it's still, every time I see him in Summer League, it's just surprising that he wasn't one of those guys that was in that second round because I'm bullish on advantage creators like that and his ability to just constantly get 2 feet in the paint and constantly draw a second defender and constantly find a way to create good offense for himself or for others. Like, all of that stuff matters. And, with the court being a little bit bigger, a little bit more spread out, like his ability in transition and look ahead passes, all of those things, like, I just feel like it translates. So he's going to have a chance to be like one of those people where I wonder in a couple of years where we look back and go like, wait, why wasn't he a top 40, top 45 pick? Because he checked off a ton of boxes for me. But he's also the archetype of player that I just really like and I'll bet on. And even if the jumper doesn't always come along, like, I'm just going to go back to those guys that can constantly break their dude down off the dribble because that stuff's invaluable.
Yeah, not everyone can do that. Not everyone can do that. I'm assuming that he's just going to end up, be it with the Sixers or somebody else, like playing G League all year. Is that your assumption for a guy like Judah, who's in the spot that he's in right now?
Yeah, especially too with what you factor in what the Sixers have done in free agency, bringing in Paul George, and then just kind of where they're at, right? Like, it just feels like they're not really in a youth movement right now. It's Tyrese Maxey, it's Joel Embiid. I think they're going to probably find minutes for Jared McCain, their first round pick. But again, like, you're probably talking about him as maybe the 8th man after they go get Eric Gordon. Who else did they sign? Like, didn't they just bring in Caleb Martin too, right? Like, so they've added a lot of like veteran ready to play guys. So it's hard for me to expect Judah to be in that rotation from day one and just go to the G League, kind of do your thing there and see what happens. But he's still like I said, just such a talented lead guard. Like those type of guys, like we've seen them elevate and evolve their games. And, I really like betting on guys who had a high usage rate in college, because those type of players tend to be able to scale down and find a way to be role players at the next level. And I think Judah's going to be able to try to do the same.
Last guy I wanted to ask you about, and this goes back to the transfer portal. He transferred here to Syracuse for his 1 year. Is Cole Swider. And, like every time I look at the box score, he's 3 for 6 for 3, 4 for 7 for 3. Like something crazy. Like, I get he has defensive deficiencies. It's crazy to me, 6'8", that he can't quite stick in the league yet. What do you make of a guy like that?
Yeah, it's like that whole skilled size thing is the new gist, right? Like that's kind of what everybody's looking for, and he has it, right? Like his ability just to be just a knockdown guy. And I think the one thing with Cole that I've always kind of wanted is a little bit more playmaking. And so like that's maybe like another aspect of his game that continually has to develop, because you just see like I try to think about like those big spot up shooters, like what Max Strus has become for Miami. Like he's so strong. Like his lower half is so strong. He rarely gets knocked off balance. So yes, he makes all these threes, but like his ability to be like able to get into the paint and get somebody on his back hip and find open shooters or find that open shot on the opposite wing, or the big man in the dunker spot. Like he's more than just a 3-point shooter. So I think with Cole, like yes, the 3-point shooting gets you in the league and keeps you in the league right now for now, but adding more of that playmaking, continually getting stronger, those are like the things I keep watching with him.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if he can hang at a roster going forward this year. All right, Isaac, always great to chat some hoops with you. Thanks so much for hopping on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
There he is, Isaac Trotter. Check him out, national college basketball writer, talking a little summer league as well. Those guys played college too for 247 Sports. Check out Isaac all over the place and his stuff on 247 for sure. We'll take a break now, do a little 411 here in this hour, brought to you by our friends at Billy Whitaker Cars and Trucks. When we're back after this on Q Sports Talk and ESPN.